Good morning and welcome to Many Paths, Many Visions, brought to you by the Labyrinth Society and with your host, Christiana Brinton. During this episode, Traci Mc.Merritt and I will explore how labyrinths foster the connection between our inner nature and being in nature, especially when community is present. Hi, Traci. Welcome to Many Paths, Many Visions. Thank you for joining me today.
Oh, I'm so happy that you have me.
Well, many people know you from the Houston gathering last year and your workshop, Making Peace with Our Times, Following Our Bliss with Laughter and Labyrinths. And it was great meeting you there. Wonderful time had by all. I'm sorry I missed that workshop. I got in on the tail end and everybody was laughing and hugging each other. And I was like, I can't believe I missed this. But so for those listeners who don't know you and weren't there in Houston, can you please give a sort of a summation of your labyrinth journey prior to finding the Labyrinth Society?
Sure. I always had a fascination with labyrinth, and even though I didn't necessarily have a direct involvement with them, it's interesting looking back at several of my vision boards from years and years and years ago. I would always find a labyrinth and place it on my vision board because somehow I knew it was going to be in my future. And it actually came into my world as I was creating my book that really was focusing on how to live our time in peace. And the labyrinth came in as a valuable meditation tool. And so that really was the beginning of my journey. Probably about 5 years ago, where I started to really explore what labyrinths were about and how I was going to incorporate it into my book.
Okay. And so out of that, you decided you found out about Labyrinth Society and decided to come to the gathering in Houston?
Yeah, it was, I saw an announcement, I believe, on Facebook, and looked at the Labyrinth Society and was very intrigued, didn't know anyone there, and went ahead and put in a proposal to offer my laughter yoga and labyrinth walk as a presentation, and was just tickled to death that I was selected. So that was really a wonderful introduction to the Labyrinth Society, was actually going to Houston and meeting all the fabulous people that are there. It was like coming home to my tribe. So it was beautiful.
That's wonderful. So you're a certified laughter yoga teacher.
Yes.
So this is the chicken and the egg thing. What came first, the training or your desire to bring, I guess you would call it more lightness and fun into people's lives? I mean, I don't know how you would describe laughter yoga, but it's certainly not, has yogic elements to it, but there's a whole nother additional element to it. So, or was this impetus because you are, if you read your bio on the TLS website, you stated in your bio you are significantly hearing impaired. So explain this whole thing, or how did this all come about, and how did this all sort of impact or influence one another, these elements?
Mhm. Well, yeah, it is that whole interesting journey of unfolding. I was born significantly hearing impaired. In fact, my parents didn't know I was hearing impaired. They thought I was actually mentally impaired. And it wasn't until I was in school age that they found out that I was actually hearing impaired, and then started speech therapy because I actually could not speak. And I was blessed to be born in a family that was incredibly full of laughter and loved nature, loved laughter, loved family, and had the support of being able to grow through that disability with confidence. Um, the laughter yoga is interesting because both of my parents, I like to say, they left for heavenly pursuits much sooner than I would have liked. And
Mm.
when they were gone, I really noticed how the laughter also left in my life because I was surrounded by it. So that got me searching for how to bring laughter back in my life. And that's where I found laughter yoga. And again, that whole element of training to be a laughter yoga leader and trying to understand what that's all about, and then the different applications for it, I really started to see how it could weave into being able to create peace in our own time. So, yeah, it's been a very interesting journey, but weaving and learning about both laughter yoga and labyrinth in being able to create peace.
Very interesting. I don't want to delve into what laughter yoga is too much because I don't want to spoil it for the people who are going to be in your workshop. Um, but let's talk about. I mean, you certainly can enlarge upon what that means if you'd like to. That's totally
Oh,
fine. But
sure, yeah.
I don't want to spoil it for your participants. But
Oh,
um,
no.
so go if you want to explain a little bit what laughter yoga is. Go right ahead.
Sure, sure. Um, Yoga, in a sense, is breathing. And what most people think of in yoga is doing certain postures. And so you're actually doing breathing while doing a posture that connects mind, body, spirit. That's a very simplistic way of explaining yoga, even though there's all different types. So what laughter yoga is still a breathing technique, and the actual act of laughing connects your mind, body, and spirit because it is a very physical exercise, and it also stops that monkey mind, if you will, and provides connection. But it really comes back to the notion of breath and being able to increase your oxygen. And so that's where the yoga piece with the laughter. But what's happened in the years is being able to learn the research on the chemical reactions and the physical reactions and all these different layers of what laughter brings. It's not just with yoga, but with laughter wellness and meditation and even laughter acupuncture. And we're using laughter in ways to be able to coach people to be able to reach their goals. So it's very fascinating, wide field that's growing and expanding.
Hmm. I'm reminded whenever I hear this, I have this picture of that wonderful picture, and I don't know what some Asian Chinese person did this picture of the Buddha sitting on the back of the buffalo, the water buffalo, with his hands in the air laughing. You know, the laughing Buddha,
Yes,
and that this happened that he did this after achieving enlightenment and
yes,
all and that was the way he came back into the world to spread this, and that's the way he went from one place to another on the back of this water buffalo, according to the Buddhist version, laughing just with his hand in there with this just laughing. And it's always connected to me with lightening up, letting go of all the stuff we put on ourselves. And as we lighten up, we can laugh. Our laughter deepens and deepens and deepens into those big belly laughs. Does that make
yes.
sense?
Oh, perfectly. And everything that you just said is what you could say for a labyrinth as well. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. So let's talk about your workshop. It's called Connecting Through the Universal Languages of Laughter and Labyrinths, Weaving Our Inner Nature and Community Nature with Nature. So first I want to talk about your past experience, your professional experience. You were a landscape architect who worked for many years with the National Forestry Service. So I imagine you have some distinctions around nature and the natural world that probably few of us have working with the Forestry Service. So can you first talk a little bit about your perspectives and observations about nature based upon what you experienced during those years.
Yes. I think more than anything is being able to recognize that being in nature, people profoundly feel a different sense of time. And that time is been equated to that sense of now, that sense of presence, that sense of there's the not the push that humans do. And so when people go out into nature and they connect to that timing of nature, they get very present and they can connect to a deeper, what I want to say, like the real self. And what I found in my work with the Forest Service, it was very much a variety of work that I did there, from creating campgrounds and interpretive trails to providing the artwork for signing, to even helping them decide how to cut a timber sail so that it looked good in a scenic corridor. So there's just such a wide range of what I would do, but the whole basis of what I did was to connect people to the land, their land, so public lands, even though I had such a variety of ways of doing it. And why that really became important to me is when we connect to our land, when we connect to nature, we really begin to connect to ourselves. And so it really is about timing and presence that takes in all the senses, what you see, what you hear, what you smell, what you feel on your feet. So yeah, that
And did you
that
ever notice, were you aware or did patterns, natural growth patterns come up in your experience in terms of how nature grows in spirals often, and was it important to duplicate this when you were having to replant or reseed areas, and did that ever come up in the work that you did?
not necessarily in like replanting, because that's a whole science of silviculture, um, that is much different than design work, which I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
So my work would be more, yes, around natural patterns, um, and how patterns occur in the landscape, and then being able to discern those patterns as far as where you are in relationship to the landscape. And what I mean by that is that patterns that you see far away are much different than patterns that you see very up close.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would be working with, for instance, if you're looking at how someone drives to a trailhead and gets out of their car and then they're like beginning their journey of how to experience this trail, the things that go through my mind is how that person, what the first step, second step, how does the site unfold for them to be able to take in the experience of whatever trail they're going to be walking. That's what the designer does for being able to create the space and the experience for people to be able to go forward and experience their national forest. Um, so my side was more about design and connecting people to the land, much more so than the biological side of reforestation
Mm-hmm.
or even timber management.
Got it, got it.
So
So one slight aside here, I misspoke before. I was talking about the Buddha riding the water buffalo. That's Lao Tzu riding the water buffalo when he came back and was enlightened and came back to work with people and do his writing and stuff. So excuse me, made a mistake there. I just remembered that. Anyway, I think that let's continue. I didn't want to misspoke, but he was Buddhic in nature in terms of being enlightened and connecting people naturally to the flow and to spirit. And anyway, so
Yeah,
with laughter, because he always had this big smile on his face, and he was always pictured laughing. Um,
yeah.
so
What's
I think that a lot of our listeners have had experience in nature. Let's get back to nature in your workshop. And you know, we go out in nature, and we often have unique, peaceful, healing, special things that happen, experiences in nature. And often, I think you ask people if they've walked labyrinths before in natural settings or built labyrinths in natural settings, that this has been the case, that they've had these kinds of very special, unique experiences. So, what are your thoughts on the inner nature connection that happens, and how does walking labyrinths intensify or expand these experiences, in your opinion?
the beauty of being able to walk a labyrinth is, again, being able to step into a different timing. And when you step into a different timing, your whole physiology changes. And what I think what is magical is when you step into that timing, that's when you connect to the timing of nature, which is really that timing of now. It's that cyclic nature. It's that um, everything is changing and yet there is nothing being rushed. And so the labyrinth walk, especially when it's down in nature, brings that timing sense of now, of presence, of interconnection so that the insights can come. And so to me, it's that whole tapping into an energy that people feel in nature. They can feel that within themselves when they get the timing of walking on a labyrinth.
Hmm. So, sort of, you're almost talking about stepping out of linear Gregorian time, you know, our digital time, into a more spiral, holistic uh, time, you know, layered time. You're talking about really that dimensional, outside of, you know, ultra dimensional, multi-dimensional time. You're talking about, sort of.
Yes, when we get into a space of really being aware of who and how we're being, what our body feels like, what energy feels like, what the sounds are, really being present, there's a time shift than when you're in a mode of doing. And when you're in a mode of doing, we all need to be doing, obviously. Um, but there's a different sense of time when you're in that mode versus when you're in a mode of being. And so many different masters have shared how being in that state of presence in the now as you are doing makes what you're doing come easier, flow. It and you cannot, you know, we can say you can have the magic of the world working with you, you know, as far as synchronicity and being able to hear what's next. But you really can't get to those levels of being able to hear for solutions until you're in a real present state of mind. So being able to walk the labyrinth really is a practice of being able to identify and feel when you're in that state of being very present versus in the to-do time pressure state of being.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. So when you're walking labyrinths in natural settings, you know, hopefully with just the sounds of nature around you, it can be a very peaceful, inner nature directed exercise, very quiet. And it's, even though sometimes the sounds of nature can be unsettling, especially at night, most of the time we're walking during the daylight hours. Sometimes there's candles out. Um, but with your workshop, Tracy, you are going to introduce laughter as a connective energy, as a breath energy. So explain this and what is the purpose of this? I mean, explain how this is going to work. Supposed to work. Will work.
It will work. Yeah, it's really fun. Um, I like to say I'm a rule breaker, a renegade, because I know that when you find a labyrinth, the first thing you're not really supposed to do is go laugh on it. It is really supposed to be about introspection and solitude. You can do it with other people, but it's a very personal experience as you walk. There really is not much interaction um, when you do a traditional labyrinth walk, even though the labyrinths can vary greatly. In most parts, the walks are fairly, with those underlying rules of very personal experience, not much interaction. What I found with the laughter yoga, the value of the laughter yoga is being able to not only make sound through laughter, not only breathe in oxygen very easily with laughter, but it also is about being able to have eye contact with people and to be able to even have playfulness, whether you're doing high fives or hugs or, those type of activities, which is just so needed in our society anymore. People are hungry for being able to have touch that's socially acceptable. They're hungry to be able to laugh without social pressures. And so being able to create a place like a labyrinth that it's like an okay place to walk and laugh, to look at people in the eye, to have playfulness with other people is a profound experience for many because they really don't even, they're not having it in their life. And so that's why it's such a, oh, what this can bring. It's a safe place. It's a place that can invite playfulness. Um, so it's not that complicated. It really is laughing and walking. But I usually lead folks through this process to be able to allow breaks in the breathing pattern because people aren't used to laughing more than a few seconds at a time. And when you go into laughing 2, 5, 6, 10 minutes of laughter continuously, it is really a workout. And they say that it's like, 10 minutes of laughter, continuous laughter, or fairly continuous laughter is equivalent to 30 minutes of exercise as far as what it's doing in your body with all the endorphins and moving your lymph nodes, and all of that. So it's really profound. The labyrinth creates a space for the laughter to be able to take place, for people to connect.
So you're taking one of the intrinsic qualities of a labyrinth, which is which is the safety aspect, that it is a safe space to explore inner directed exploration as well as now outer directed. And I find this very interesting in this day and age too that you're doing this because we're all so and it, I'm a boomer, so it bothers me. But for younger people, millennials on down, it doesn't. It's just part of the natural order of things. But so outward connected, but focused, glued to our technology, glued to our iPhones and our smartphones and our iPads and all that stuff, and not therefore less and less able to make contact, less and less able to be in each other's spaces comfortably. So,
Right.
so this is what you're saying about this taking this quality of the safety quality of a labyrinth, intrinsic safety quality, and enlarging it to include this and providing this for people that especially now is less and less common. So, but how do you guide the participants? So you have the people coming on the labyrinth. and they are expecting, or do you prepare them? They're expecting to have a quiet labyrinth walk, or when you start the workshop, you're preparing them that this is going to be a workshop where you make eye contact, where you're expected to be interconnected, and are you actually walking a labyrinth, or are you using a finger labyrinth?
Yeah. So I've really had fun with all aspects of what you just described.
Yeah.
Um, it most point, what I really have been enjoying lately is working with Oregon State University with an interdisciplinary yoga class, where the teacher Sephora Berman is offering students a variety of types of yoga and ways to experience yoga. And so she has included laughter yoga in my offering as part of her curriculum, which has been really fun because I've actually chalked a labyrinth on campus and then participate in several of
Ooh,
their
ooh,
classes.
what was that?
What was that?
There was some buzzing right then. I don't know what happened. Anyway,
I don't
okay.
know. So anyway, that's been real fascinating with the different types of classes from, like, for instance, the freshmen are very, don't want to be seen and don't want to be heard, and very shy, very self-conscious.
Mm.
And having them go through the course, yes, they know it's laughter yoga and they know they're going to be doing something with a labyrinth, but they usually don't have any association of what a labyrinth is or what laughter yoga is. And so I go through explaining what labyrinths are about and actually share where there are other labyrinths on campus or in town that are really about personal, quiet, and introspection. Um, but that what we're going to be doing on this labyrinth, or the direction on this labyrinth, is to be able to invite laughter. So it is a specific laughing labyrinth with that intention. So I'm very sensitive to not wanting to take, labyrinths that are really designed for silence and try to disrupt that space into something different. So I'm creating new spaces that make sense for the laughter to occur, so that it is safe and it's welcomed and it's not an intrusion, because I know that there isn't always the best place for laughter to occur, so that we're sensitive to that. And so, yeah, we walk them through what labyrinths are about, what we're going to be doing here, and then being able to have the elements of what laughter yoga is. And it's really interesting, the range of receptivity. Sometimes it really does take a little bit more work for them to understand what the benefits are to even be open to trying it. But for the most part, I've had success in every class in having the majority of students go from a place of feeling very separate, slightly uncomfortable, to actually being able to have eye contact with fellow students, do some high fives, they're laughing with each other, and feeling a sense of lightness that they definitely didn't have when they got to class. And to me, that just, it's just heartwarming that they themselves can feel the difference between when they came to class, they were tired, they maybe didn't really want to be there, or they just were, like, ugh. And then at the end of the class, having gone through the laughter yoga and the labyrinth walk, their posture is different, their expression is different, and when we'd ask them what they were feeling, they too would notice the amount of energy that they had and kind of excitement for what they were going to do next.
Mm. Because and this whole thing about the laughter, when we're so bogged down and laden with our issues and our dramas and our stories and our pasts, and um, it can bring up, laughter itself can bring up memories that aren't so pleasant. memories of bullying, memories of verbal abuse, house in the home, uh, and all of this. So I imagine that it can be a little bit of a touchy, or this is it, it you want it to be therapeutic, and are you I guess you're trusting the labyrinth to let people work through this in the process of being connected and making this eye contact and using the breath. Is that accurate?
Yeah, yeah. The the power of laughter. What's interesting is Dr. Annette Goodhart, did some fabulous research on laughter, in that laughter is actually a physical response that babies have. And it is something that we are built with physically as a way to deal with stress. And her research is really profound in that when the body gets stressed, like even the notion of doing peekaboo with a baby, the reason why they laugh is it's actually because they're in a state of shock or startlement. And in that response to that stress, they laugh. And that's a physical way the body actually uses to expel air, to release tension, to be able to deal with what's going on. This happens way before we have the cognitive power to understand humor. So this is significant to bring it back in as a way for us to deal with stress and tension now as adults. When we use laughter as a way to relieve stress that isn't necessarily tied to humor, it can be, but the whole idea of detaching it from humor takes the mental component out, and it becomes a physical action. And so when we practice laughter as a way to be able to relieve stress, we can actually take something that is stressful, say like a credit card bill, and laugh at that credit card bill. And what it does is it allows our system to be able to rise above it, to be able to deal with it, versus worrying about it or being angry about it. We don't have the same capacity to deal with the stressful moment. So the laughter is like a leverage, if you will. I like to say it's a levity leverage. It allows us to shift our energy up to be able to find solutions. And that's what Albert Einstein brought forth, is that we cannot find a solution at the same energy of the problem. And so what laughter does is it raises our energy to be able to reach and hear the solutions that are necessary. For those that have had some traumatic experiences with laughter, like being laughed at, being able to laugh themselves in an environment in which they are in control, they can actually release the trauma of that experience and gain power within themselves to know that they have the power to be offended or scared or hurt, or they can heal and move beyond that. And that's what's just really exciting about using laughter in therapy, is being able to move beyond the traumas that we all face.
That's great. That's fascinating. So it's a double whammy. So here you have the laughter on the labyrinth and the labyrinth itself. So in your workshop for the gathering, are you actually going to have a labyrinth that people walk?
Yes.
Okay.
So
So
last year I actually taped Laughing Labyrinth, and um, I used two different labyrinths. If I'm if it's it's a real large group and I don't have much space, I will use a double spiral labyrinth that allows people just to keep moving through, and there's no actual stop in the center. So that allows the playfulness of going through a labyrinth but not having to like have a dead end in the middle sensation. Or like I did last year, I will actually tape a labyrinth that's based on the Man in the Maze design. which allows people to go around the circle, but then also go towards the circle and away from the circle, the way that it's designed. Um, and that in itself allows for more interaction than some of the tight woven labyrinth designs that, the other types that are out there. And then I usually create a large center to be able to have folks have the sensation of being able to be very close together in the center and being able to experience the contrast of being very close together, being very far apart, being able to have different interactions on the physical with each other.
And so,
So I don't know how big it'll be or where it'll be
yeah,
at
yeah,
the conference, but
yeah.
I have done labyrinths outside. I have mowed huge, like 69 feet across labyrinths in grass, which is really fun to have folks laughing. I've also done temporary labyrinths with string from 30 to 69 feet for women's retreats, and then also as small as 11-foot canvas in a small room for small groups. And so it really, as long as the path is wide enough to be able to walk and not have to look straight down to see where you're going, that's a critical piece. If the path is too narrow, then people have to look down. And so you want to have the path wide enough to be able to have, you can kind of see where you're going, but you also can look up and interact with people. And so that's some of the criteria I have.
Great, great. Okay. So this sounds really fascinating. So this whole automatic response or ingrained response of the physical body, the human physical body, this response of laughter to relieve tension and stress, combined with the safe container of the labyrinth, and the labyrinth itself being a place where you can sort of let go of your logical mind and allow the intuitive to come forward. All of
Mm-hmm.
this is interconnected with this workshop, and it will allow people to um, uh, will provide people with this inner nature connection and community connection that you're talking about here.
Yeah, it really comes down to being able to feel peace in our time. And all of these tools, the laughter yoga, the labyrinth, and being in nature, and being able to even connect with people, it really is about being able to experience peace as a way of being in our time. And so, yeah, uh, I love playing with all the different elements.
Yeah. Do you have any stories you'd like to share of your experiences with some of the laughing labyrinths you've created?
Sure. The what kind of a two-part story of my work with sharing Laughter Labyrinth with the Social Security office.
Yeah.
Um, and that was a beautiful experience because I walked into the office and it's very much a government office with a lot of tension, and it was a mouse maze environment in which everyone needed to be quiet, and I could feel the tension in the room. It was really palpable. And Social Security office would be a stressful place to work often, I would imagine. So I was giving a workshop to the executive leadership that was there, and went into the conference room in the back and walked through all the different things about laughter yoga and labyrinths and what have you. And at first it was a little hard for them to get laughing, but by 10, 15 minutes, I really had them roaring, with the laughter. And I was walking around the room and I looked out the little side window out of the conference room, and there's someone outside giving me this signal to stop.
Oh no.
because we were so loud. And so then I transitioned the whole group to learning how to trace the labyrinth with their finger and do silent laughter. So you're still expelling the air, but you're tracing a labyrinth. And I just had to chuckle that afterwards the folks were saying people couldn't even talk on the phone. The laughter was reverberating through the whole building, which to me is pretty funny. But the second story was the person that invited me says, "Oh, I have to tell you what happened." Several weeks later, this person in a cubby several down from her threw their papers up in the air in disgust. They were so angry with whatever happened on the phone. And so she was watching them because that didn't usually happen, that someone would show such, forceful frustration. And so then she's watching, and they kind of took a breath, and they had hung the laughing labyrinth that I had them trace up on their cubicle. And she said, I saw them take it down and start tracing the labyrinth. And they finished tracing the labyrinth. They picked up all their papers and went back to work. And to me, that was like so beautiful to know that it can be a tool that can really lift us to be able to function and to be able to get into a place not only just in healing, but just to be able to deal with whatever happens in life.
Yeah, shifting just that ability, and must be a very stressful atmosphere. I was going to say, when you talked about laughing so hard that it was hard for people to talk on the phone, I'm sure it's exactly what that building needed. It needed energetically to clean out the space and clear out all of the heavy energy in there, because I can't even imagine how stressful it must be working in that kind of situation. I mean, it's like the DOV in state department, any kind of government office, but being able to shift energy like that just by using something that you can trace is a very valuable tool for people. So that must be very rewarding to hear that.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And as far as like future work, I really would love and the vision is to be able to have a room in these types of offices, whether it be government or corporate or college, where we're seeing now more and more, like at airports and even on college campuses and possibly even at places like Google, where they have meditation rooms where people can go and be quiet and do meditation. The thing that I'm seeing is that more often than anything, people need to actually let something out. They need to be vocalized, and they need to do it in a way that's safe and is socially acceptable, and that's laughter. Um, so being able to laugh has so many ways of being able to vocalize, be able to breathe, be able to smile, and be able to actually have fun with other people, which is that connective layer. So being able to create places that allow sound, that allows interaction, it's almost like replacing the old gathering around the water cooler days, where we don't get to do that anymore. The offices aren't set up to be able to have folks have that time to laugh and be able to share. And so my vision and my inspiration is to really be able to introduce the idea for places to have a room where people can laugh and walk a labyrinth on their own or with each other, that actually puts them, and that's part of the science part that's really exciting, is they actually put them into a gamma frequency, which allows more productivity. It allows the brain to be able to focus and be able to take tasks easier and better, more effective. So it's actually something that can really improve productivity in the workplace. So that's my vision, is to be able to really be looking at how we can integrate laughter and labyrinth in the workplace, in colleges, even in healing centers. It's so many different applications for being able to bring levity in the world.
As a physical exercise, I mean, this is it's a across the board kind of thing. It's a and so how does your laughing labyrinth timepiece, your book, how does this all fit in? Talk about the your book a little bit and the workshops you've created around it.
So the book incorporates the laughter labyrinth in that you can do the tracing and the laughter as a daily meditation, and or do it whenever you want to. The book itself goes through and explains a variety of ways for how and why it's important to raise our energy. And I I kind of wrote it from the standpoint of folks that are curious about energy and being able to um, they're curious about it, but they may or may not know what it's all about. And so I tried to write it with pictures and being able to different diagrams to be able to show how it's important or why it's important to have certain perspectives and certain practices to be able to raise our energy to be able to achieve what it is that we're here to achieve. So the subtitle of the book is Empower Your Reason for Being by Following Your Bliss.
Hmm.
And so the whole notion of laughing and tracing the labyrinth is about being able to feel bliss so that you know what it is that you're following. The book entails about half of it is actually a calendar for being able to be aware of who you're being and how you're being as you're doing what you're doing in the world. So it's a part of creating a vision. It's about being able to be present in your day-to-day life as far as what you're appreciative of, what you're hopeful for, what you're inviting. And it also allows some creativity to be able to doodle and draw different events that happen in your life. I tried to take different things that different masters have said would be good to implement as daily habits and created a space for you to be able to try those. One of them is by Dr. Wayne Dyer. He offered that being able to have an I am statement before you go to sleep at night, your brain, your subconscious works on that during the night. So the book has a place for you to write an I am statement the night before to be able to have that practice. So the book offers a multitude of different things that you can do to bring how you're being in the world to the forefront. And so the laughter in the labyrinth is a practice. It's also a beautiful visual that's very centering and peaceful. So yeah, my personal reason for being here is to create places for peace. And it took a long time for me to really understand that. But this book is really what I had to do first in creating a place for peace for us within as a personal space. And then it's actually going to, go with creating these places for the laughing labyrinth out in the world, hopefully all over the world. But I just had to create the place with the book as in a personal sense first.
Mhm. So in the workshops, do you focus on one specific idea or one day or one aspect, or do you let them pick? How do you organize this so that they get the most bang for their buck?
Well, what's really interesting is that folks really, a lot of people have a real hard time being able to define a vision, and then being able to give themselves the permission to actually allow it, pursue it, work towards it. And so what I'm finding in the workshops is really being able to walk people in not only being able to really get a sense of what it is that they desire, but also being able to give them the space of giving themselves permission to step into it. And it's almost like once they can get some of those two things of what is it I really want versus tending everybody else needs and wants, what is it I really want, and then really being able to give yourself permission to allow and see how you could put that as a focus. So I'm finding that the workshops tend to be the front end of that, and then we go over several of the different practices that they could adopt to to be able to practice that sense of being present as you're doing whatever you're doing.
Hmm. Okay. And so so what you're saying is that it really depends on the group that you have. Uh,
Yeah.
uh, you try to be as flexible as you can be, and then what the group presents to you, then you take it from there and use the pieces out of the book to help them be more present. So do you, I mean, do you, because what I'm trying to understand is that you have this, it's sort of a calendar and a daily way of being present and focusing and but then you have a group situation that has, and people come with all sorts of different issues and expectations and needs and and um and so do you try to be a very specific per person? I mean, do you focus on each person, or do you try to give them an overall guidance or path, and then say that there's ways that you can adapt this to you in your personal situation? I mean, because if you have 20 people, it's going to be very hard, and in 1 hour, 90 minutes, must be hard to you know work on each person individually.
Well, sure. I
Work
think that
with, yeah.
the different types, if I'm just giving a presentation about what it means to follow your bliss, because many people don't even know what that means. They don't know what bliss feels like, and they don't know what it means to follow it. And so I may just go through a presentation of, okay, what does it mean to follow your bliss? Which is what Joseph Campbell would say, follow your bliss. What does that mean? And so that might be all that the workshop is entailing is what does it feel like? What does it feel like in your body? How do you recognize it? The value of it. Being able to do practices so that you really can recognize when you are following your bliss and when you're not. So that might be one aspect of a workshop that I give. Another aspect might be like I'm planning to have a retreat at the beach where I have a small group of people spend a couple nights, 3 days, where we really dive into what is your dream, what's keeping you from your dream, why hasn't it manifested yet, and being able to again attribute the physical sensations, not just what you think, but what you feel, so that you can practice the sensation in your body as a knowing. And I think that's the piece that so many people feel not only disconnected from other people, but they actually feel disconnected to their own sense of emotions and sensations in their body, to be able to have that confidence in the intuitive self, the confidence of knowing that they're making the right decisions for themselves, and to be able to have the trust to take the next step as it unfolds. And that's where I love the beauty of the labyrinth, is that whole sense of taking the next step.
Hmm. So bringing it back to the future things, and you say you're going to do something on the beach. You are a resident. You live in Corvallis, Oregon, which is right, correct, south of Salem. Is that correct? Am I correct about that?
Yes, that's correct. It's
Okay,
about 2 hours south of Portland.
2 hours south of Portland. So the beach you're talking about is the Oregon coast.
Yep, on the Oregon coast, just over the mountain in the Newport area.
Okay.
Uh, yeah. Um, and I'm just looking at a variety of different ways to be able to, like you say, it can be, you know, whether it's small groups or a whole room of people. I'm really starting to play with how um, I can have folks really get the most out of the book.
Terrific. Okay. So, I mean, we're almost out of time. Nobody was on to ask questions, so I'm going to keep asking questions and for the next couple of minutes, Tracy, if that's okay with you. So, are you a born and raised resident of the Pacific Northwest?
I am, and actually, my parents were too. And my I come from all over, but I'm actually Cherokee, Native American, and Irish. And my family basically came from the Midwest to Oregon, and it's been a blessing for me to pretty much been all over Oregon except for that Oahe Canyon area. That's my next trip in the far corner.
Okay. Um,
Yeah.
so when you're planning on doing these, so how can people find out about your workshops? That's the gist of it.
Oh, okay.
What is your website address?
So my website is my name, TraciMc.Merritt.com. So TraciMcMerritt.com.
Okay.
Um,
And
and they will
and if they go there, they'll find out about any events or activities, workshop that you're going to be doing.
yes,
Okay.
yes. I also post on Facebook. I have my own personal page, but I also have a page that's called Laughing Labyrinth Peace Project, where I tended to really focus on laughter yoga and labyrinth information sharing. And I also would share events through that as well, and welcome people to find Laughing Labyrinth Peace Project and on Facebook.
Okay. And of course, you can put it on the TLS Global Group page too, as well.
Yeah,
And in the calendar listening too on the TLS website, on the Labyrinth Society website, if you so choose. And, that's the other thing. As a member, you have free advertising. You can put it in the marketplace as well, anything about your website or your activities. So there's always that.
yes,
Um,
and the book is on the website on the TLS website.
Great. So I have one more question, and this might be a little juicy to put right at the end, but I'm really curious. You have not mentioned anything about the deaf community. Do you sign, and have you at all? Have you brought this information and this what you're doing here with Labyrinths into any of the deaf communities in the Portland area or the Pacific Northwest or anywhere as of yet?
Actually, no. When they found out that I was severely hearing impaired, at that point in time, the theory of the day was that to fit in mainstream society, I was to not learn sign and to lip read.
Mm.
And it's interesting because I could actually remember being in third grade and talking to my speech therapist saying, I think signing is so beautiful. And she was adamant. She says, no, you will not learn it. So it's been an interesting journey for me working with other severely hearing impaired and deaf people within the government. And learning a little bit of sign language. The thing for me, learning sign language, lip reading, and hearing is like speaking three languages at the same time.
Mm.
And my brain hasn't yet been able to do all three at the same time. But I say yet, it very well is possible that I can do all three at the same time.
Mm.
It's interesting. I oftentimes am in a world in between two cultures because I don't fit in the deaf culture and I'm not fully of hearing either. And so I haven't yet worked with the deaf culture with laughter labyrinth, but I would see that it would definitely be welcomed because laughter and labyrinth are universal languages.
Mhm.
And I love working with people with disabilities because we all have that element between us, no matter what we can and cannot do.
Mhm.
Um, One of the things I wanted to share that's exciting is that I don't know if you're familiar with Patch Adams.
Yes, very much
Patch
so.
Adams is, Patch Adams is a doctor that uses humor and clowning in his work, and he has very um, unique ideas for how the medical system should be played out, and has a hospital being built called the Gesundheit Institute.
Yep.
And I actually have talked to Patch Adams, and he has very much enjoys Labyrinth. And when I talked to him, he said, well, if I'm going to have a labyrinth at the Gesundheit Institute, it's going to be a laughing labyrinth. So I'm very excited to be able to work with Patch in creating a laughing labyrinth at the Gesundheit Institute within the next couple of years.
Oh my golly, Tracy, that would be fabulous. That would be
Yes.
so cool. That's in this is in North Carolina, South Carolina, somewhere in the mountains, correct? Is that if I remember my reading?
Yeah, I know that Patch is in Indiana, but I think
Okay.
it's either in the Carolinas or the Virginias. I
Yeah.
like I have to go. I was ready to get on a plane and get over there right away, and he was like, slow down, we're not ready for you yet." But no, I'm very excited that he totally understands Labyrinth, and of course he understands laughter, and so he's very excited to be able to have a laughing labyrinth on the campus, and I just couldn't be thrilled.
Yeah, yeah, that
Really
would be
want
that.
to do that.
What a wonderful exploration that will be because they're being used so successfully, especially in the Pacific Northwest at hospitals. The one up the gorge there in the Dalles,
Yeah,
which is intrinsic to pretty much intrinsic to the hospital and the culture there. Wonderful example of how hospitals are using and integrating labyrinths into all aspects of their care system. It's just fabulous. So
right.
this is wonderful news. This is wonderful, Tracy. So
That's the thing. Being able to have a laughing labyrinth, especially in a children's hospital, to me is just extremely exciting because of knowing all the different layers of how it heals. And so that's a whole nother element of being able to offer a place for people to play and laugh and connect, as well as the benefits of walking a labyrinth.
yeah, yeah, wonderful. I let me know how that goes because you know, wholeheartedly, I think that's a wonderful project to support. And so if there's a way for me personally to support it, I would love to. And you know, keep TLS in the loop about that because I think it's a wonderful, it's a fabulous project and certainly something that um, that once that happened, the research out of that would be invaluable.
Yes.
We will please, you know, keep the Labyrinth Society in the loop about this. So so we so a lot of people can benefit and other hospital settings can benefit and
Yeah.
wonderful. Thank you. So I think we're out of time. So it's been
And a lot. I really appreciate being able to share my vision, and it's I feel like I'm at the beginning of my journey in many ways, even though it's been unfolding. So just being able to have the support and the enthusiasm from the Labyrinth Society has been huge for me to be able to go forward with confidence to pursue this vision.
Well, it's wonderful that it's in the Pacific Northwest this year, the gathering. And so, well, I'll see you there, and it'll be great. I'm coming early to Portland, flying into Portland and staying with Jody Lorimer, and going to hang out for a few days because I used to live there for 6 years and I miss it every day. I miss the area every day. I yearn to be back there, I have to tell you. So I'm thrilled to be going back there at the end of this month, and or end of October anyway. And it's really been such a pleasure sharing this hour with you, Tracy. We didn't really get a chance to talk in Houston very much. And so thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you so much.
And many continued blessings on your path.
Thank you. You too. We'll see you soon.
Yep. So you've been listening to the Labyrinth Society's Many Paths, Many Visions broadcast by Spreaker with your host, Christiana Brinton. Be sure to check the TLS, the Labyrinth Society website, our Facebook page, and our global group, and the YouTube site for a list of upcoming dates and guests. Also, if this podcast has piqued your interest in the Labyrinth Society and you'd like more information about membership, please go to www.labyrinthsociety.org/membership. Thank you for listening to this podcast episode, and may you find what you need on your path through life. Namaste.